We have Matt Cekander with us today, CPA from Dorian Winters and Co. LLP. Matt has over 20 years of accounting, auditing, financial, and operational experience, drawing from his years of public accounting and in private business. Matt is going to talk to us about potential childcare assistance for businesses and employees. Matt, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you, Courtney. Uh, Today we're going to cover potential, which is a keyword in this, potential childcare assistance for business and employees. As many of you know, in the tax code, there's a lot of caveats. So we're going to talk high level about where IRS and government in general is incentivizing childcare. And they do, it seems to me, the way I've looked at this over the course of my career is what the tax code is often used to incentivize and de-incentivize certain activities. One area that's continued to be incentivized is providing childcare, and that's it's mentioned sometimes as credits or deductions. We'll just call them tax incentives. Some for businesses, some for employees. The taxpayers, bottom line, each entity, whether you're an entity or an individual, you may get some benefits, and I can't say across the board you will. It depends on income limits, and just know that there's that disclaimer. Also, disclaimer, if I'm throwing out any personal opinions or views, those are mine. Those aren't necessarily Dorian Winters' views, so I will mention that as well. As Courtney noted, I've been doing this for about 20 plus tax seasons. Started up north in the state and moved back to the Effingham area about 15 years ago. So it's home yet once again. But anyway, we're going to start with the and there's a couple other items on the slide there about some of the areas that I've worked in over time. Went to Illinois State. Actually went to Lakeland for a couple of years. Got my associate's degree in accounting, and then went to Illinois State University. Graduated in 2001 and went up to Northern Illinois University up in DeKalb for my CPA review courses, and finished those while starting while going through a tax season. So anyway, it's a little bit about me. Okay, so let's look at some potential tax incentives for childcare businesses. Again, I'm using the word tax incentives just to clarify a little bit, because you can get a difference between deductions and the credits. The first one that's come up that it's been around for a little while, but it doesn't seem like it gets used very often, but it could be a way for businesses to be a little more creative in offering childcare for its employees. It works out to be a pretty nice credit. I'm going to give you the form number, so if you want to look that up, form 8882. And what it is the credit for employer-provided childcare facilities and services. Again, that's the credit for employer-provided childcare facilities and services. And on that form, it's a pretty simple form, and that's most of what I'm going off of here in explaining this. It's that the box on the left, kind of in that orange color there, and the one in the middle in gray. These are both part of that form 8882 for employers. And how it breaks down is the facilities, just like it sounds. If you're acquiring, I'm gonna read it here. If you're acquiring a child care facility, if you're constructing a child care facility, rehabbing a child care facility, or expanding property that then is going to be used for child care services, the business can write off, can take a credit. So it's better than a write-off. Write-off will be a deduction. Take a credit of 25% of those expenditures, and that phases out over time. You can't just open a child care center on your business premises and close it the next year and get the 25% credit. It doesn't work that way. There's about a 10-year phase-out period. But you can take that credit in the year that you have those expenditures, 25% up to that maximum of the $150,000. That $150,000 is all inclusive on that form 8882 that we're talking about. Again, we're talking about a form that's 2 pages. That's it. 9 lines with the instructions. It's 2 pages. Actually, only about a page and a half. So it's not too difficult to navigate. If you're new to this, or you have a CPA or tax professional helping you, just mentioned Form 8882. I was listening to someone presenting on this, and it'd be a great conversation starter, and maybe a creative way to retain or attract employees. We're in a part of the state, actually it's not unique to Illinois, that it's very difficult to attract and retain employees. And this is something we hear even in the CPA profession. It's how do we take care of those with children, with small children, or that maybe want to see them over their lunch hour. This could be a way to do that if you're thinking about doing these things. So let's say you construct a building, and just run through some quick math, just so I'm being as clear as I can here. And you spend $200,000 on either expanding property or new property rehabbing it. You spend $200,000 for that childcare services for that section of the business. Then you fill out this form and you take $50,000 as a credit. So you spent $200,000, your actual cash out cost after you file your taxes and claim that credit is $150,000 net. So in that example, essentially the tax code system has matched you 25 cents on the dollar for your building out those childcare services, those facilities. There's then also another component of that, and the qualified, and I will say it's got to be to count as a qualified childcare center. At least 30% of the children being cared for need to be employees of that business. So I do want to be clear about that. So you can't just add on a childcare service. It can still be open to the public, but you have to have at least 30% of the children being cared for as employees of your business. There's also a spot on that Form 8882 for the child care resource and referral, 10% credit. What some companies have decided to do, or say, okay, we don't have the dollars to build out these facilities for childcare, but we're going to go into partnership. We're going to pay a contract and outsource the childcare. And for any of those dollars, let's say that are covered by the employer to get this done, the employer, the business, can take a credit of 10% of those costs. So if you're contracting out $10,000 to somebody else to help figure out this answer of how are we going to provide childcare for our employees, and the company is paying $10,000 a year under a contract to help with that $1,000 is the credit amount in that instance, 10%. And that also goes on that Form 8882. So you have two different parts of a credit that you can take on this form. One, if you're actually doing the build out yourself, or another if you're spending some money to contract out those services. Then there's another item, and there's all kinds of examples of what constitutes the expanded property and the depreciation. It's got to be part of the part of the facility that is owned by the business. So some of these are self-explanatory. I'm reading it to you anyway. It's got to be depreciable property, meaning typically you're depreciating these over 39 years. So under that example where we said you spend $200,000, you get a $50,000 credit. You have to say, okay, my cash out was $150,000. So to be fair to the IRS, you then depreciate out $150,000. You don't depreciate the $200,000. That'd be double dipping. But it's better for your business because you're still getting that $50,000 credit. You'd rather have the $50,000 credit than a $50,000 depreciation deduction, which might only be worth about $15K net of tax. Hopefully that makes sense. We're not doing a tax course, so I'm just going to tell you the credit is better than the deduction. But just to clarify those items. And then the another distinction where this caused some issues, or some people were abusing this. IRS rules often come about because of someone abused something. So the principal residence of the taxpayer, it can't be a principal residence of the taxpayer that you're claiming this build out for. So if you have an in-home daycare, you can't start putting additions onto your own personal principal residence and trying to take this credit. It's meant for offsite paired with the building of the business that's owned it. So, and you can probably guess why that rule's in place. Otherwise, they're having a U.S. essentially subsidized principal residence wealth bill. That's not the intent of this. Again, the intent is to provide childcare for employees and find ways to credit that back to the employers for doing so. Okay, any questions so far? Are we good? Does that make sense? Okay, and if you do, just put those in the chat room. Courtney will get those back to me or if there's things we need to follow up on at a later time. Okay, the third thing on the slide, the dependent care, the flexible spending accounts, like the cafeteria plans, sometimes they're mentioned or referred to as those in 2020. Well, I'll go with what 2022 max is now that we're beyond 2021. There were some special COVID rules, so we're not going to get into that. But the maximum amount, $5,000 per employee. If these are set up by the employer, then the employees can put in up to $5,000 for childcare. And then what happens with that $5,000 is the employee does not pay income tax. The employee does not pay FICA or payroll tax on that $5,000. So if they're in the 22% bracket and they're also saving 15% FICA, by the time you net it all, I mean, over a third of that $5,000. So just taking 30% of that for quick math, $1,500 you just put back in each employee's pocket that's providing childcare, which I think is a pretty good deal. I see a decent amount of these accounts. It flows through the W-2s on the year-end statement showing the salaries and how much was put away. So those amounts, I don't see it as often as I think I would, which means there are probably some opportunities for some businesses to look into doing some sort of cafeteria plan or building in these flexible spending accounts for dependent care. Again, why would the employer want to do this though? We know why the employees want. Well, first of all, if the employers are making the employees happy, there's a morale thing and a cultural thing that happens that is a good thing, first of all. But for the employers, there's also a dollar benefit, because if you think about it, if the employee gets to exclude, if each employee gets to exclude up to $5,000 for dependent care from the FICA, from that 15%, so their shares is 7.65%, but what is the employer paying? The other 7.65%. And I know I'm getting a lot into percentages. So just to say it another way, if the employee is saving their 22% tax bracket plus their 7.5%, we'll just round it, that's that 30%. They're saving $1,500, the employee is. Well, the employer is also saving its share of the FICA that's not being tagged into there too. So it's nothing, 7%, just quick math, 7% on $5,000, $350, $350 times however many employees take advantage of that. It's all bottom line. It all goes to the bottom line. It's all net of cash, net of tax. So there's incentive, I believe, for employers to have these set up. And it's something to bring up on whoever you get your benefits through or set up, just a conversation. Hey, should we be adding dependent care flex spending accounts to our employee benefits? Get another attraction and recruitment tool, possible retention tool for existing employees that are having these. How do I find help with the increasing cost of childcare? Okay, so and some of that's going to tag into our next slide as we go into the employees. Again, if there's any questions, just type those in the chat box and Courtney will compile those and maybe we'll see if we can get you some answers. Just be as specific as you can with those and we'll do our best with them. Okay, now we're going to switch over to the employee side, which we've been talking about. You kind of got to look at these two things together. But for the on the employees, as a tax preparer, oftentimes the form number is listed there, but on the federal side, there's a age 0 through preschool, form 2441 for daycare. So that you can take a credit for childcare provided, and there's different adjusted gross income limits per year. So this is where I say it's not just across the board. You got to pull out your tax return and look at what your income level is. But if you don't take away anything else, just know that if you are paying for childcare, make sure to ask for a form from the childcare provider that should show the childcare provider's EIN or social security number, the name of the childcare, or if it's an individual, and then the address of the daycare provider, and get that turned in with your tax documents. Because a lot of times we ask, like, oh, I didn't even know that was deductible, or an after school program that they're going to. If it's for the benefit of the taxpayers to be able to work, and that's why they're paying this child care, then through preschool, then that's a potential for a credit to take on Form 2441. That's a maximum of $6,000, $3,000 a child, up to 2 children, $6,000. Now in 2021, those numbers were much larger, and people saw some nice refunds as a result. But in 2022, it's going back to that $3,000 per child, or $6,000 in the aggregate at max. And the lowest percentage, even if you made $1 million a year, is 20%. Well, 20% times $6,000 is still $1,200. So let's take that credit, get the $1,200. Still worthwhile to do. And it could be more than $1,200 if you maxed out at $6,000, depending on your income range. But without going into too much detail on the tax code part of it, just know to get the child care, any preschool. If there's after school programs, go ahead and ask for those. I mean, it doesn't hurt to at least ask the tax preparer, hey, I heard something about this. Does this qualify or not? Because a lot of times we don't know unless we have the form. So I'm not going to be offended if I have another document just to ask about. I'd rather it be that way than finding out later, oh, well, we could have been taking this all along. So that's the on the child care items. The if there's well, the dependent care FSA, which is a flexible spending account, that's that second item there, up to $5,000. That's, again, we're on the employee side of let's say, and let's say one of my daughters was going to spend $6,000 on dependent care, $500 a month for the next year. What I would do is I'd put in the max of the $5,000. Again, that's going to save me close to 30% or whatever it's going to save me. So it stays income tax free. It stays FICA free. It saves the employer their share of the FICA. Now that additional $1,000, I'm still going to get the statement from child care provider that shows that I spent the $6,000, because first of all, I want to show proof to IRS that, hey, the $5,000 was free and clear. It's for child care. You have to put that on your return. And then that additional $1,000 becomes eligible for that item in orange there, the Form 2441, where it could be worth another 20, again, at 20% on the low end, it's worth another couple $100 that you're getting tax back. So get those forms for any daycare provided, and make sure to get those turned in with your tax documents. And on that dependent care flex spending account, even if you don't take out the max of $5,000, you're not sure how it works, or the employer hasn't set one up yet, there's still opportunities to take those expenses on that Form 2441. That's just a form number that gets attached to your personal income tax return, the 1040 at the end of each year. Any questions on that? Does that seem to make sense? If so, please, if there are questions on it, please type those in so we can take a look at those. The last item is on the child tax credit reminder. And this is one in 2022, it's we still get that $3,000 and $3,600 if there are underage 6. So $3,000 if they're 17, if they haven't, if they're underage 17 at the end of the tax year. We still see some tax returns that occasionally come in, and those child tax credits aren't being taken, and that's pretty big dollars. You can tell pretty quickly if you look at page 1 of your personal income tax return on the 1040, and look at the dependents that are being claimed on page 1. And there's a child tax credit box, and just make sure that box is checked. If it's checked, you're probably getting the credit, but just make sure to look at that. It doesn't hurt to do that. I mean, sometimes it's sometimes we don't see clients, or we don't know all their children, and if they don't tell us that or bring that up, then they just don't get that tax credit reminder. So that can happen. Sometimes we only see people once a year, and it's not always with the full family. So just a reminder, public service announcement on that child tax credit reminder, because it's a big deal. It's a big dollar amount, so you'll want to take that. Okay, and that's the, oh, I get this question occasionally comes up. It says, well, if I'm getting the child tax credit, can I also get the child care deduction and that credit over on 2441? Answer is yes, you can do both of them. You get both of them. They're in separate parts of the tax code. So it's not you take one or the other, which makes intuitive sense. Well, for those of us that do tax returns regularly, but for a tax preparer or for a taxpayer that doesn't do this all the time, you might not know that. But you can take both of those. So I think that hopefully gives some good incentive overall for potential tax incentives for both employers and employees. And then I'll pause now, and if there's anything, I know Courtney, you're on here. Do you want to ask anything or go over anything else?
Well, first and foremost, Matt, wow, that was very informative. Wonderful presentation there. You definitely went through a lot. Glad we're recording it. People can go back and listen to it. And I took a lot of notes and have some chicken scratches here, but very informative. And thank you first and foremost for presenting to us today. Do have a couple questions for you. Going back to the childcare facilities. So the potential tax credits for childcare on the business side, that form 8882. Is this a place on site only? I know you kind of touched on that about acquiring a place or renovating a place, but is it on site only? Does it have to be the business, or can it be a subsidiary of that business, or what's the flexibility there?
Yeah, good question. My understanding of it is it has to be property that's owned by the business, not by somebody else. And nowhere do I see that it has to be adjacent or attached. But the property itself has to be otherwise depreciable property by the business, which to me suggests the proximity doesn't so much matter as the business owning or having some stake in that property with it. Percentage wise, I don't know if there's a way that it can own just a portion of it, or percent. I'd have to research it as far as, what if it only owned half of the building or something like that, or was affiliated that way. But so I don't know the answer to that one offhand. But there, to answer your question on does it have to be on site? No, not necessarily. It just needs to be otherwise depreciable property by that business.
Understood there. And is this a one and done? What if you start offering a child care facility, you start offering these services, and you go and make improvements to the building or to the facility? Are they able to continue to take advantage of this tax credit?
Yeah, if they do the as long as you do the if it's a rehab, so you're saying you already have an existing facility and you're rehabbing it, or you're
so say you rehabbed it and then you went back in and you made improvements to the HVAC, or you did something to the lighting, or maybe you remodeled and put another classroom in of some sort.
Okay, so if you do that, then you're well, it'd still fall under, you still put it on the 8882, it'd just be under rehab or additional expansion the next year, the next year down the road. You just don't want to exceed that 150,000. So at some point you're gonna cap out, overstep the credit. That's right. But you don't have to do it. And that's on that 150,000. You can't exceed that per year. I don't know offhand if you continue to build a bunch. I guess in this day when you've got with the cost of real estate development and everything else, you could run up on that quickly. So if you have a very large scale project, I'm gonna leave it with this: consult with your tax advisor to see if it makes more sense to try to spread that out over a couple of years. And if you're not a partnership or an S corp, I guess I should say if you're like a 1040 taxpayer, you're doing this and you have a Schedule C, that's not going to mean a lot to maybe some people listening, or sole proprietor that's got a separate business EIN. You can put it under on your credits on, I think it's the form 3800 directly. I'll mention that form 3800 for non S corps or partnerships.
Well, thank you for the additional clarification. And I think it's important to note, 150 max for that credit. You need at least 30% of the children that are cared for from your employees. And it is not applicable to somebody that has a in-home daycare to somebody that is their residence.
That's right.
Looking at the continuing on for the dependent care, the FSA, you did a great job in explaining how this is a benefit to employees, but also a benefit to that employer. Now, if there's an employee listening right now and they don't have something like this with their employer, any recommendations on how to approach their employer to inquire about this?
Yeah, ask about it. I mean, what we do, we ask employees from time to time about benefits if they're meeting the need. Read about any survey that you can with the employee benefits. A lot of times it's not about the salary or the compensation. I mean, it is to an extent, my personal opinion, but at some point it's about what are the benefits or what things are being offered here. That's why you're seeing more and more employers starting to look into 401k or simple IRAs or other options, because employees are demanding this. And right now the employees are demanding. They're in the driver's seat. I mean,
yes,
it's the way it is. It's an employees market right now. So I mean, there's ways to be tactfully bring that up, of course. But if you understand what the benefit is, then the employer can look at, okay, is this going to be an administrative burden, or hey, we already have so-and-so helping us with our benefits package. Let's add this part on, and it'll pay for itself by the time we, the employer, the businesses, don't have to pay the FICA portion on it. It's a win-win in that case.
Now, most certainly a benefit on both sides of the table. And it doesn't seem like it's something that would be difficult to bring up to your employer if it's not something that's currently offered for you. Or if there's an employer looking at this, I'd encourage you to investigate that as well, especially as you noted with the tight labor market. Here's another tool potentially for recruitment, but also the retention of your existing employees.
Yeah. The employers often they need a slip of paper that's signed by the employee saying how much you're paying the employee, the daycare provider. So there is some administration that goes in the employee's folder showing, okay, this is why we aren't including this in their income, because they provided us this form. So I don't want to say that it's completely hands off by the business, but yes, still a benefit to the business.
And then the final question for you, when talking about Form 2441 with the potential tax credits for childcare on the employee side, is that childcare provider required to provide that information? If you're not receiving it, are they required to provide that info?
They're not required to take it. I can tell you right now, the tax preparers want that form because we want the EIN, the social, the address. From time to time, we run into a situation where the daycare provider won't provide it. Usually it's someone that's doing it, out of a home, or maybe under their social security number. They don't want to give it out, something like that. And the IRS says you can take it, but you have to attach a statement to the return. It goes through the list of items of why it basically, it doesn't really encourage you to do it. We'll put it that way. Understood. But you have to go through, list the efforts of what you took with it, and then just know that when you get that number, what IRS does with that, I'm sure there's a matching, or they go out and look under that EIN or maybe that social security number and make sure that person is reporting it as income, child care provided income. So that could be why some of that's going on. But yeah, I would be careful about that and ask those questions ahead of time, and that might influence who you pick as a child care provider if you're wanting these credits. Because if you're going to put, I want to defer $5,000 of my income, I don't want to defer it, I just don't want to pay tax on it, then you want to make sure in advance. So great question, great point, that child care provider is going to give you that at the end of the year. Otherwise, you're going to get hit with the tax on that, because you can't prove that the child care was provided by someone with an EIN or a social security number.
Awesome. No, a wonderful presentation. That's all the questions I have. Again, thank you for educating us today and providing a lot of wonderful, valuable information. And I appreciate the things that you do here for us in Effingham County.
Okay, hope that helps. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you.